In this final stage, we're going to take the script into a more moderately advanced level. What we want to do is have the user that's now logging in as a unique user every time to choose a random plant each time. So how can we do this with AgileLoad? Well, the answer is in the parameters that we're sending to the server. So what we do is we go to the page where we've made our choice. So in this case, we clicked on African Orchid, and then we got across to this page here, which was the details about the African Orchid page. And if you take a look at what's happening here, there's actually a get request going and navigate primary. And one of the parameters is the item ID, which is F0001. Where did that value come from? Well, it came from the server. So whereabouts exactly in the transaction chain did it come from? Well, what I can do is double click to select the ID, right click and choose find and replace in HTTP responses. This is a unique feature to AgileLoad, and it's really handy because it's going to go through all of the responses that ever came back from the server and look for this particular string, this text. So here it is. Wherever F0001 is referenced is highlighted here, and we've got the ID of the request, which is in fact the request above, which is very, very useful to know. You always need to choose a request above because, of course, a request after hasn't happened yet, so we can't do the extract at that point. So usually choose the top one. I'm going to double click this, and it's showing me the item ID. So my plan is to make that random by searching in that page of products for all the item IDs and choosing a random item ID. So this is the page of all the products here, and I suspect each one will have a different item ID. And in fact, you can see when I move my cursor over a plant, this area that I'm hovering over with the mouse will show the request, and you can see 2, 3, 4. Each one of these responds to a different item. So going back to my source tab, I'm going to try and extract this value. So I right click and choose extract value. I'm going to tidy this up a little bit so it reads a little bit better. So this, we know it's item ID, which is the left string that we're looking for, and the right string is actually a quote. For anyone that doesn't know about scripting, you have to qualify a quote with a backslash. So what we're saying here is anything between item ID equals and quote, I want to potentially pull that out. I'm going to use a magnifying glass to check it's going to work, and it's pulled out F001. Thing is though, if I extract this value, it's always going to extract F001 because it's always going to be the first item in the list. So I want to say, actually choose a random occurrence of that. I'm going to choose the random checkbox here, well, random occurrence / offset, and it's actually the random choice that I want to make. And click on the magnifying glass, we get now a different value. In fact, we should every time have a random value. We're back to our original value, 3 now, 11. So this is a great way to pull out a random value from a page, yet constrained by only the values that appear on that page. So we can only ever click on something that actually appears in that page. I'm going to give my value a name, so I'll call it item ID. Click apply, and you'll see it's inserted some code for me. It's declared a variable called item ID. If we go up to the top, you can see that it's actually being declared there, and it's extracting anything that appears between item ID equals and quote, which are our item IDs. So every time we run the script, we're going to have a different item ID. So now I have this information, what I need to do is tell AgileLoad the next time it makes this request, I don't want it to use this static value, I want it to use the item ID that was pulled out. So I'm going to use my recorded request details button here to shift this arrow down. So this window points to the context of this request. If I click actually on, let's hide this part here and click on HTML, you can see this is what this page comes back with. And if we click on the client tab, you can see the item ID that was sent across, and I now want this to be a variable value. In fact, it's the item ID parameter. So we click apply changes, and there we go, it's now parameterized. Thing is though, this is actually just a GET request to get this particular page, the African Orchid page. If we look down a little bit further, the item ID value is used again in a post statement. And this is where we're telling the web server, actually this is what we're going to buy, this is what we're using in our add to cart action. So I'm going to move my cursor down again. I'm going to again go to the client, and where I see F001, F0001, I'm going to change it to be this item ID variable. So there we go. We're both looking at the page responding to a random item coming from the list of plant products that we can buy, and then we're buying that same item. So just to recap, we're going to this page and saying, hey, I want to pull one of these products up. AgileLoad goes and gets a random product, and then it will make a request for the product page. So when we play this back, we should see a different page come up, a random page. So let's play it back and see what happens. So we log in. There we go, home page, log in, logged in, our flowers, and it's gone to Sparkler, which is great. Order number 7, so it's ordered actually a Sparkler in this case. One thing to watch out for in the replay differences is that the pages in a scenario like this will be different, so you might see some more differences. And if there are any checks, like this here, a check is where it's checking the page title. They might start to fail because the page title might be different. In this case, we're not doing any checks for page titles. And also in this script, if a check fails, the script continues. You do have an option to have the script stop, which will be something to look out for if you do have that option selected, because making a change like this to the script can stop your checks passing, in which case you just need to make the checks a little bit more generic, or possibly remove them, or set those particular checks to check continue. So we're done now. We now have a script that logs in as a random user. Each virtual user will log in as a random user from a list of 1,000 users. It will then buy a random plant selected from the plant's product page. So this is a pretty good script, pretty representative, and ready to go into the mix of our load test.